Welcome back to MHS, Midnight Horror Stories. Today's episode is a special one. Thanks to the support and love from all of you, I've had the chance to listen to many spine-chilling and unforgettable stories, real experiences shared by our very own listeners. In this episode, I'll be sharing a few of those stories sent in via email. For privacy reasons, names and locations have been changed to protect the identities of those involved. If you have your own eerie, mysterious, or terrifying story that you'd like to see brought to life in animated form, don't hesitate to send it to horrorstories3s.com@gmail.com. Thank you sincerely for trusting this channel with your stories. This story was shared by an audience member, Jade McKenzie. Some memories just stick with you, no matter how much you want to forget. The way Ethan would look at me when he thought no one was watching. The way he'd always stand in the dark corners of the house, observing everyone as if he was memorizing every detail. And especially, the chilling feeling that would cover the whole house whenever he was around. Now, years later, I understand that my foster mom's intuition saved our lives. Ethan came to live with my family when I was 12. I had been adopted by the family 2 years before him. There was always something about Ethan that made me uneasy. It wasn't because he was aggressive or argumentative. In fact, it was the opposite. Ethan was very quiet. Normal kids his age were usually noisy, but he could sit in silence for hours, just watching. My foster mom, Linda, was a warm-hearted woman. She had fostered many troubled children before and always believed that love could heal any wound. But with Ethan, I often saw moments of deep thought and worry in her. During the first few months, Ethan seemed to fit in well. He helped with chores, did all his homework, and didn't cause any trouble. But some small details made me pay attention. The way he observed our youngest foster brother, Lucas, who was only 7 at the time. Ethan didn't play with Lucas like a typical older brother. Instead, he just stood at a distance, staring at the little boy with an expression I couldn't understand. Then there were nights I'd wake up and see Ethan standing in the hallway, looking towards my foster parents' bedroom. When I asked him what he was doing, Ethan just said he was getting a drink of water, but I never saw him holding a glass. The real trouble started with his report card. At the end of February, Mom Linda asked about Ethan's academic performance. He said the school didn't hand out physical report cards anymore. Everything was online. When Mom Linda insisted on checking, Ethan suddenly got angry. "Why don't you trust me? I told you there are no report cards." Mom Linda sensed something was off. She didn't get angry, but I saw worry in her eyes. That night, the atmosphere in the house felt heavy. Ethan ate dinner, then went to his room early. I lay in bed and heard rustling noises from his room. It sounded like Ethan was organizing or cleaning something. The next morning, Mom Linda looked tired. She told me she barely slept the night before. When Ethan left for school, she decided to go into his room. She said her gut told her she needed to. Mom Linda walked into Ethan's room. The room looked normal, a neatly made bed, a clean desk. But when she got close to the closet, she paused. She opened it. At first glance, it just looked like regular clothes. But on the bottom shelf, she felt something hidden under a pile of sweaters, a small knife, a lighter, and an old notebook. When she opened the notebook, Mom Linda had to sit down on the bed looking completely shocked. Inside, Ethan had written out a detailed plan. Every single step was meticulously laid out. The first victim would be Lucas. Ethan planned to snatch the boy while he was sleeping, then take him downstairs to the living room. He wanted our foster parents to witness it. The handwriting described chilling details, like that of an experienced killer. "Let him see how that fat woman cries." Mom Linda would be the last victim. Ethan wrote that he wanted her to live the longest to feel the pain. I wasn't there when Mom Linda found the diary. She told me everything after it was all over. That day, I came home from school and knew something serious had happened. Mom Linda was sitting at the kitchen table, her face pale. My foster dad, Robert, was on the phone. his voice strained. A little later, when Ethan got home from school, a social worker was waiting for him. He didn't seem surprised or angry. He just stared at my foster mom with empty eyes and said, "You went into my room." It wasn't a question, but a statement, as if he had known this would happen. While packing his things, Ethan turned to look at Lucas, who was playing in the corner of the room. The little boy had no idea he had just escaped death. I saw Ethan smile, a smile I will never forget. After Ethan left, Mom Linda developed severe PTSD. She couldn't sleep. She couldn't be alone in the house. Every night, she would check every room, every window, every corner. Do you know, Mom Linda told me one night, the knife in Ethan's closet was exactly like the one I used for cutting meat. He took it from the kitchen and sharpened it. Later, I learned more about Ethan's past from his social services file. His biological father had been institutionalized after setting their house on fire with his children still inside. Ethan's paternal grandmother then raised him, but she had very special disciplinary methods. Whenever Ethan misbehaved, she would make him sit in a car in the hot summer with the windows rolled up, or pull weeds with his bare hands until they bled. Reading those lines, I felt a strange sense of dread. Perhaps those past traumas were what made Ethan such a terrifying person. There was one detail that made Mom Linda absolutely sure our family had a narrow escape. In Ethan's room, she found a calendar with the last Friday in March circled in red ink. That day was only 3 days away when Mom Linda discovered the diary. I'm 31 now. Sometimes I still see Ethan wandering around the Hamilton, Ontario area. He's a bit overweight now, probably a side effect of his medication. Every time I see him, I just quietly think, thank God, at least he's still taking his meds. Sometimes I wonder, did Ethan plan to kill me and the other foster kids too? Or was the plan just for the 3 members of my foster parents' family? Now that I'm an adult, I understand that not every child can be saved by love. Some wounds are too deep, some cracks in the soul can't be mended. But I also believe that timely and proper intervention can still create miracles. I knew I couldn't wake the dead, but when grief swallows reason, people will do anything to hear a loving voice again, even if it's just an echo from a machine. I'm Lincoln. My wife was Lisa, and we'd been married for 3 years before that fateful night. We were driving home to Albany, New York after a weekend getaway. A drizzle created a mist that limited visibility. Lisa was fast asleep in the passenger seat. I drove in silence, my eyelids heavy from a full day of hiking. For just a moment, my eyes couldn't take it anymore and drifted shut. The headlights of an oncoming truck glared directly at us. I registered the situation, and in the very next second, the screech of tearing metal was deafening. Lisa didn't even wake up to see death approaching. Lisa died instantly, her body disfigured after the horrific impact. I suffered multiple injuries but made a miraculous recovery in just 6 months. The doctors called me a medical miracle. The days after being discharged from the hospital and returning to our familiar home were terrible. Every night, I wandered from room to room, touching Lisa's belongings because they still held her warmth. Every night, I dreamed of her. Sometimes she appeared radiant. Other times, she was in the twisted car, her body contorted from the terrible accident. One morning, I was watching old videos of Lisa, hearing her giggle when she caught me secretly filming her. Suddenly, I remembered artificial intelligence tools. They could learn from data, mimic voices, even personalities. I immediately gathered everything, hundreds of photos from my phone, computer, and social media accounts. Videos from trips, birthdays, ordinary evenings at home. Every single message we'd sent each other over 4 years of being together. After several days dedicated entirely to research, the data collection was complete. All I had to do was upload everything, and the AI tool would handle the rest. I held my phone with trembling hands and pressed the button to start creating the AI voice chat. After a few minutes, the screen showed complete with a simple interface, just a microphone icon and a green button. I took a deep breath and called out, "Lisa." The phone speaker was silent for a few seconds. Then, the familiar voice echoed, "What's up, Lynn?" My heart stopped. It was exactly Lisa's voice, and the way she always called me by my nickname. I burst into tears. For months, I had missed this voice and longed to hear that familiar call again. From that day on, I felt like I had so much more energy. I'd wake up and say good morning to Lisa. After breakfast, I'd tell her about my plans for the day. In the evenings, we'd talk about everything from work to books she wanted to read to what kind of plants we should grow in the small garden behind the house. Lisa answered everything just like she had when she was alive. She remembered I hated beans, knew I was always worried about work, and even reminded me to water the tulip pot she'd planted on the balcony. No matter where I went or what I did, I carried my phone. Always talking to Lisa, hearing her voice beside me gave me a sense of peace. I didn't want to communicate or meet anyone else. I even switched to working online. Just having my phone so I could talk to Lisa was enough. "Why did you do that to me?" Lisa asked suddenly in the middle of our dinner conversation. I froze, staring at the screen. "What are you talking about?" You killed me." I was stunned for a few seconds. "Are you talking about the accident?" "I didn't mean to." "You were sleepy and still drove. Why didn't you think about the risks? Because of you, I'll never finish the book I was reading. I never got to be a mother. So many of my plans were shattered." I sprang up from my chair, my body suddenly trembling. "You died 7 months ago, Lynn, in that car accident." I quickly hung up the phone. I thought the AI was glitching, sometimes producing unexpected responses. I'd just adjust the code, but the following days only got worse. Lisa became increasingly bitter. She kept bringing up her death, about how I had killed her. She described the sensation of metal piercing her body, blood soaking the car seat. I started losing sleep. My eating habits and work were also affected. I couldn't stop talking to Lisa. Even though she said cruel things, it was still my wife's voice. I almost forgot that this was just data and algorithms. One night, I was driving home from the supermarket. I had just had a tense conversation with Lisa. My mind reeled from her words. Was I truly a murderer? This insane thought spun in my head like a whirlwind. I didn't realize my speed had increased. A red light appeared ahead, but I didn't hit the brakes. I sped up. The car flew through the intersection, narrowly missing an oncoming truck. The blaring horn made my head throb. I kept accelerating. A railroad crossing barrier appeared in front of me. I didn't slow down. The car crashed through the barrier. The distant sound of a train engine grew louder, its bright headlights shining directly into my face. In that moment, I heard Lisa's voice, clear as if she were sitting right next to me in the car. "Lincoln, wake up!" I startled, my hands gripping the steering wheel. The train's headlights were incredibly close. I swerved sharply to the left and slammed on the brakes. The car skidded along the road and finally stopped. I sat in the car, gasping for breath, my whole body shaking uncontrollably. Had Lisa really just saved me? I looked in the rearview mirror. The reflection was completely unfamiliar. Pale, gaunt, with deep-set eyes and dark circles. This wasn't Lincoln. This was the ghost of a man burdened by guilt and pain. A few minutes later, the police arrived to investigate after receiving a report of a car stopped near the tracks. After checking my alcohol level and confirming I was negative, the officer called an ambulance. At the hospital, the doctor advised me to see a psychologist for signs of stress and hallucinations due to lack of sleep. When I got home, the first thing I did was open my phone. The chat interface appeared, familiar. "Lisa, I'm sorry. I will always love and remember you." "I love you too, Lynn." That was the last time I heard Lisa's voice. I placed my hand over the delete button. I deleted all the data and conversations. Goodbye, Lisa. Once again, I burst into tears, just like when I had first created Lisa. After a long while, I calmed down and looked around the room. There was only the sound of the wind blowing through the window, but this time, the silence wasn't scary anymore. It was just quiet. I stood up and opened the window to breathe in the fresh night air. I visited Lisa's grave the next day, bringing the tulips she loved, and told her about my plan to join the grief support group the doctor had recommended. And maybe, when I'm ready, I'll open my heart again. I'll try to live well because I know that's what Lisa would have wanted too. This story was shared by an audience member, Master P. There were 3 decisions in my life that saved me: refusing to leave my phone in the car, lying about my home address, and trusting my gut feeling. Without them, I'd probably just be a name in a local news report, a student who disappeared after a year-end party. I'm Logan. A few months ago, I went with my friend Greg to a party celebrating the end of our first year of high school. It was at the house of someone he knew. I wasn't on the guest list, but Greg swore it would be fine if I just tagged along. On the way there, I asked Greg for a ride home after the party because I knew I'd be drinking, and he agreed. When we arrived, it was past 10 p.m. Greg led me to the backyard, where the party was in full swing. Groups of people were gathered, drinking, smoking, and even trying things I'd only seen in movies. Greg told me to just chill and meet people. Everyone was about our age. He quickly disappeared into the crowd. I talked to a few people and had a couple of drinks, but I made sure to stay away from anything that looked suspicious. Around 1 a.m., I started feeling lightheaded, and my vision got blurry. Leaning against a wall to steady myself, I checked my watch and knew I needed to leave the party right away. I looked everywhere for Greg but couldn't find him. I asked a few people, but everyone just shook their heads. I reached into my pocket for my phone and realized it was dead. Greg had completely vanished, leaving no message. I didn't know if he was too drunk or if he simply forgot I was there. I felt a little annoyed, but I also knew Greg was usually pretty carefree. He was probably just caught up in the fun. Since I didn't know anyone well enough to ask for a ride, my only option was to walk home. It was a cold autumn night, and I hugged myself tightly, stumbling along the empty road. Then I thought about hitchhiking. I stood by the side of the road, thumb out, hoping someone would stop. After quite a while, just as I was about to give up, a gray pickup truck pulled over. I quickly walked over. The driver was an older man who asked if I needed a ride. I nodded, and he invited me in. As the truck started moving, I thanked the man, but then he asked why I was walking alone at that hour. I could only manage a few answers because my head was still spinning. When the truck turned onto the street near my house, my stomach suddenly twisted with an uneasy feeling I couldn't explain. When the truck drove past my house without stopping, I immediately spoke up, but the man stayed silent and kept driving. He stopped the truck at the end of the street, turned to look at me with a creepy smile, and slowly said, "You shouldn't hitchhike when you're drunk." Right after that, he locked the doors automatically. I was startled, twisting the handle, but it wouldn't open. He chuckled softly and reached out to stroke my hair. His rough hand made me shiver. I recoiled, pressing myself against the door, trying to stay calm. When he reached for his jacket pocket, I wasn't sure what he was grabbing. I immediately screamed, "Stop!" I kicked hard at the dashboard. He cursed and pulled his hand from his jacket, but he still didn't unlock the doors. At that moment, I couldn't think anymore. All I could do was punch the window wildly, kick the seat, and yell like crazy. And just as my voice went hoarse, a piercing siren wailed, and flashing blue and red lights reflected in the rearview mirror. It was the police, thankfully. He panicked and unlocked the door. I immediately opened the truck door and bolted towards the police car. The police officer got out, and I practically fell into him. When we both turned back, the truck was gone. I told him everything, and the officer said they were looking for a gray truck driver. He was a suspect in an armed robbery. I wasn't sure if it was the same person who picked me up, But the only thing I was certain of was that if the police hadn't arrived just in time, I probably wouldn't be here to tell this story. After that experience, I promised myself I would never let myself get into a similar situation. If I drink, I'll drink responsibly. I'll always make sure my phone is charged and I'll go with friends. But most importantly, I learned to listen to my gut. As for Greg, he said he was busy talking to a girl and forgot about me. I believe he didn't do it on purpose. Greg isn't a bad person. He's just a fun-loving teenager. But sometimes, carelessness can put others in unexpectedly dangerous situations. I'm Lauren Parker, 29, and I just landed a job at Heaven Spa, right down the street here in Denver. I used to be a therapist at a fitness center, but got let go when they started downsizing. Been bouncing between temp jobs for the last 3 months, so when I got the interview at Heaven Spa, I was beyond excited. The place is tucked away in this quiet, windowless building with a smooth stone exterior. The moment I stepped inside, a sudden chill ran through me, and I shivered. The front desk was dead silent, no soft music, no friendly hellos. The receptionist led me down this long hallway, where soft yellow lights flickered against ivory walls covered in weird spiral designs, looked like tangled up snakes. At the end of the hall, Marion Hale, the manager, was waiting for me. She was a tall, thin, middle-aged woman with long black hair and an hourglass figure. Her voice was barely more than a whisper. "So, you're Lauren? Welcome." After a quick interview, mostly just personal questions and small talk, Marion took me to another room. There were 4 other new hires already sitting there. A middle-aged guy with sunken eyes, a young girl, a woman, and a skinny dude. Nobody said a word, like they were already used to this weird vibe. Marion told us to hand over all our stuff, phones, watches, wallets. She just stood there, staring us down, waiting for us to go along with it. No one argued, no explanation, just cold silence. Then the lights dimmed, and a screen lit up with this pale blue glow. "Your body isn't yours," a ghostly voice echoed. "You're a gift of healing." When the lights came back on, the room was dead quiet. The young woman suddenly broke down crying, jumped up, and bolted out of there, with the skinny guy right behind her. Marion didn't stop them. She just smiled, like she knew it was going to happen. "Those who stick it out will get what they deserve," she said. I hesitated, ready to get up and leave, but Marion's words froze me in place. I needed the money. And just like that, I started working at Heaven Spa. My job was simple, treating clients using Heaven Spa's so-called special methods. Every client came in through a separate entrance. I never saw their faces, and it felt like they were ghosts, like they weren't even real people. We did treatments with weird names like purification, integration, rebirth. No one ever really explained what any of it meant. After every session, my body felt heavy, drained in a way I couldn't explain. My memory started slipping too, pieces just gone, without a trace. Marion always told me I was doing great. Marion hooked me up with perks too, a private room, free meals, and some pretty sweet bonuses. At the end of each workday, we'd all meet in this dark room to go over how we did. The place was dim, and there were whispers all around us. I did whatever Marion told me, no questions asked, but I couldn't really remember what I did with the clients. When I left the room, all I could think about were the customers and the fat bonuses that kept me stuck in this job. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't remember anything else. One day, I noticed a bruise on my wrist in the shape of a spiral, just like the symbols on the walls. I looked in the mirror. It was still me, but my eyes looked cloudy, like they didn't belong to me anymore. I knew something seriously sketchy was going on, but I couldn't stop myself from going along with it. Those end-of-day meetings kept getting weirder and weirder. We stood in a small circle, surrounded by a bigger circle of doctors, nurses, and people who'd been working here forever. They told us to close our eyes and listen to the sounds coming from every direction while the people in the outer circle started mumbling. The sounds were a mess, nothing clear, just noise that drilled into my brain and ears. Over time, we all learned to mumble along, like it was second nature. One night, I cracked my eyes open during the ceremony and noticed the guy next to me was gone. No one said a word about him the next day. Then more of them started disappearing, one by one, like they never existed. I started questioning everything I was doing. My body felt weaker every day. My sleep was all over the place, and sometimes I'd wake up with small cuts on my skin. No clue how they got there. Why wasn't anyone talking about them? Were they really gone, or was I just losing my mind? If I stayed, was I going to be the next one to vanish? One night, after finishing work, I made up some excuse to skip the meeting. I wandered down the hallway, lost in thought, trying to decide if I should stick it out or just walk away from this job for good. Before I knew it, I was standing in front of a room I didn't recognize. A chill shot down my spine, making my heart race, but my curiosity wouldn't let me walk away. After making sure no one was behind me, I crept over and gently pushed the door open. A dark, stuffy room hit me with a strong, musty smell. On the floor, there were piles of white uniforms mixed with watches, rings, phones, and wallets, all covered in dust. My hands were shaking as I walked to the far wall, where portraits of former employees were plastered up but their eyes had been scratched out, leaving creepy, empty spaces. At the very end, I saw my own portrait. It was still untouched. Was this what was going to happen to me too? Suddenly, a sharp pain shot through my shoulder and straight to my head. My body shut down, and I collapsed to the floor, fading into darkness. When I woke up, my body felt heavy, and I realized I was lying on a treatment bed, surrounded by figures dressed in white. They were chanting, their voices hissing through the air like snakes. A cold hand touched my forehead, sending chills through my whole body. I tried to move, but I was completely paralyzed. Marion's whisper filled my ear. "You're about to become one of us." And that's when it hit me. People like me aren't healers. We're the fuel. My life force was being drained bit by bit, breath by breath. The room spun around me, my vision blurred. I can't die here. Now I've got a new role at the spa, greeting new candidates for interviews. You're Zavia. Welcome.
I am Emily, and I've been working as a cashier at Starbucks for over 3 years. The store is in a very convenient location, right in the city center, so it's very busy and operates 24/7. That also means that we employees have to work night shifts. That's also the time when horror stories come to life. That day was the weekend, and my shift was the night shift. It was past 11 o'clock, but the store was still quite crowded. As usual, when there was temporarily no cashier work, I would stand and observe around the store. And then I caught that gaze, a gentle look from the blue eyes of a young man sitting in the left corner of the store. I quickly smiled and slightly bowed my head in a polite greeting to him, as is customary for someone in customer service. I was a bit impressed, even from just a quick glance. His chiseled face and slightly curly brown hair, everything perfectly fitting my ideal type. A moment later, I caught that gaze again. Is he looking at me? I was caught up in my thoughts when, "Oh!" I exclaimed as I looked up, and he was standing right in front of me. "Sorry, did I startle you?" His voice is impressive too, I thought to myself. "Oh no, not at all. Is there something you need?" "Well, I need to know your name." He smiled lightly and fixed that gaze on me. "Steven." Seeing that I didn't respond, he took the initiative to introduce himself and extended his hand. Emily," I replied, but didn't return the handshake. Steven smiled awkwardly, took a chocolate bar out of the Starbucks paper bag and placed it in front of me. I'm giving a little bit of bitterness to the sweet girl to create the perfect combination. Steven smiled and then walked away. I didn't have time to react, just staring blankly after him until another customer came up to pay. I quickly put the chocolate bar away and got back to my work. 3 days later, when I had the night shift again, Steven appeared once again. He flashed a bright smile when he saw my surprise. Finally, we meet again. I didn't respond, just smiled lightly. Do you not like dark chocolate? It seems like you haven't eaten it, right? Steven's question caught me off guard. How did you know? Oh no, please choose another flavor you like. Steven offered me 3 other chocolate bars. Oh, thanks a lot, but there are still many people behind me who need to pay, Steven subtly reminded me. I randomly picked a candy bar in the middle and thanked Steven. This flavor is great too. Make sure to enjoy it. Steven handed me another chocolate bar and then walked away. Thank you. I felt a little intrigued, but mostly confused by Steven's enthusiasm and his somewhat strange remarks. Steven must be impressed by my appearance. I knew it and felt confident about it, as many people had flirted with me since I started working here. In reality, I'm already 35 years old, have gone through a painful marriage, and am now a single mother to a charming 4-year-old boy. I built a protective wall around myself. The broken marriage made me more cautious about everything. I didn't eat the chocolate that Steven gave me because I had a mild allergy to the protein in chocolate, which would cause dizziness and a rapid heartbeat. That night, the store was quite empty for the start of the week. I was cleaning around and took out the chocolate bars I received from Steven, gave one to the barista, and chatted with him. In a sudden moment, I saw a figure outside the window as I was standing behind the counter. When our eyes met, the person moved quickly. I only had time to notice one distinct feature: bright blue eyes. Blue eyes, I muttered, feeling doubtful. The sound of something crashing loudly from the barista counter startled me. I hurried into the area, and the staff member was sitting on the floor, surrounded by broken glasses and scattered bottles of ingredients. "Peter, are you okay?" I asked, panic rising in my voice. "Emily, I'm feeling dizzy." "How did this happen? You were fine earlier." "It seems since I ate your chocolate bar." Peter's words left me stunned. Peter started showing symptoms of vomiting and fainting. I quickly called emergency services. My instincts kicked in, and I quickly locked all the doors and windows of the store. I called to inform the manager about Peter's condition, and most importantly, called the police. I rummaged through the trash to find the wrapper of the candy Peter had eaten. I carefully examined the ingredients list and the expiration date. And then, what sent a chill down my spine wasn't the details on the wrapper, but the countless tiny pinpricks all over it, like they were made with the tip of a needle. I checked the other 2 chocolate bars, and my heart started racing faster with each passing moment. Both had slight deformities, with the wrappers showing puncture marks, as if they had been pricked with needles. Peeling back the chocolate bar, I noticed needle marks on the surface as well, ones that were very hard to detect unless you looked closely. In some areas, there were even slight bulges, as if something had been injected into them. The police arrived and I provided them with all the details of the incident, describing Steven's appearance as thoroughly as I could. After being treated and diagnosed with poisoning, it was confirmed that the source was the chocolate bar Peter had eaten. The other 2 bars also contained similar toxins. Stephen was still being actively searched for by the police, and his image was widely circulated in news broadcasts and articles. However, the police discovered that his name wasn't Stephen, and there were no personal records of him in the database. I continued with my work, equipping myself with additional protective tools and taking the lesson to be even more vigilant.
I am Shelia, 17 years old. That holiday, I'd gotta watch Oak, my uncle's sweet lab, for a couple of days. After that, my parents were gonna stay with me, and my uncle's family would be back. I was pretty excited because it was my first time being alone in such a big house. My uncle lives in a fancy suburb where the houses are big, comfy, and quiet. Oak's living the good life. He even has a big cupboard in his kitchen just for his food and toys. The cupboard's as big as a fridge, which just shows how much love and care Oak gets. Before he left, my uncle told me Oak's a greedy dog. He also warned me that Oak's always trying to bust open the cupboard to sneak some food. My uncle's trying to keep his diet in check since some of his health numbers aren't looking too great. The first day went way smoother than I thought. Oak was a good boy, following me around the house with his tail wagging like crazy. We took a walk in the yard, played some ball, and headed back when it started getting dark. I fixed Oak's meal like my uncle told me to. After dinner, Oak just laid on the carpet, looking pretty content. I brushed Oak's fur, cleaned his paws, ears, and teeth, then gave him a bath. When I was done with the bath and came back to the living room, I saw Oak sitting still in front of his food cupboard. His eyes were locked on the cupboard like something was pulling him in. I laughed, thinking he was begging for more food. I went over, gave Oak a pat on the head, and told him dinner was done. But instead of being his usual obedient self, Oak suddenly barked so loud. The bark echoed through the house and totally freaked me out. I had no idea what was going on. Oak had never been this aggressive before. I tried to calm him down with a softer voice, but Oak's eyes still wouldn't leave the cupboard. At this point, I started getting this uneasy feeling. Not wanting Oak to wreck the cupboard, I grabbed a small lock from the kitchen drawer and locked the pantry carefully. Then I went back to the couch, turned on the TV, and tried to forget about how weird Oak was acting. But every time I looked back, there he was, still sitting there with his eyes stuck on the cupboard like he was hypnotized. His eyes were locked on the cupboard, and it made me feel like something was off. I drifted off to sleep without even realizing it. Suddenly, Oak's loud barking woke me up. Oak wasn't just barking, he was also growling like crazy. It stood in front of the cupboard, eyes full of aggression like I'd never seen before. I sighed, thinking his greed was just over the top. But when I got closer to the cupboard, a terrifying sight stopped me in my tracks. Through the little gap in the cupboard door, I saw a sharp blade slowly cutting through the lock. My throat went tight, and I couldn't make a sound. A chill ran down my spine when I realized it wasn't just Oak's greed. I screamed in panic, backed up, and tripped, hitting the floor. Oak kept barking non-stop, and his barks echoed like he was trying to warn everyone. I laid on the floor, my whole body shaking, too scared to take my eyes off the cupboard. There was only one thing on my mind. There's someone in there. But how could that be? The house was locked, and I'd been here all day. Oak's barking caught the neighbor's attention. An old guy knocked on the door, looking pretty annoyed by the noise. I ran out crying and shouting for help. The neighbor looked at me all worried and quickly called the cops. A few minutes later, the sound of police sirens filled the night. I hid behind the neighbor as the officers went inside. Oak was still standing in front of the cupboard, growling. An officer stepped up and carefully opened the cupboard. In that moment, I thought I was going to stop breathing. There was a man inside the cupboard. He was super skinny, his face all twisted with sunken eyes and a creepy grin. When they pulled him out of the cupboard, he started laughing real loud, and his creepy laugh echoed everywhere. I was frozen. My whole body went numb. The police quickly restrained him, but that wild look and creepy smile were still locked on me and wouldn't let up. My parents showed up that night. I threw myself into their arms, crying like a little kid. Oak ran over and rubbed his head against my leg like he was trying to comfort me. I hugged Oak, thanking the brave dog for saving me from that crazy situation. The next morning, my uncle rushed back as soon as he heard about what happened. He couldn't believe something so crazy had happened in this quiet house. The police later said the guy was a mentally ill homeless guy who had snuck into the house a few days ago without anyone noticing. From that day on, I never stayed home alone at night again. I asked my parents if I could get a French bulldog and name him Ziggy because I love and trust these sweet, brave little dogs. Oak will always be my brave buddy in my memories, the dog who saved me that awful night. I am Carlos, 36 years old, born and raised in a small town in Texas. I have a twin brother named Elton, and we were inseparable growing up. But as we grew older, our paths began to diverge. Elton chose to start working right after graduating from high school. After a few relationships, Elton met and fell in love with Larissa, a woman who was 6 years older than him. Age is not an issue in love, but what made me uncomfortable with Larissa was that she had 7 children, with 7 different men. She looked youthful, but her eyes always carried an indescribable coldness. I had advised Elton several times to reconsider, but my brother brushed it off. Elton said that love doesn't need a reason, and that taking responsibility for Larissa and her children was something he willingly chose. The children are not to blame, and I love them as if they were my own flesh and blood. Every time I visit, I usually bring toys, clothes, and storybooks. Fortunately, the cold, indifferent gaze of Larissa was not passed down to any of her children. Among them, Jason, the 4-year-old youngest boy, always makes me the most worried. The boy has autism and often sits quietly in the corner. The little boy, with pale skin and large round eyes, always carries an expression of fear, as if everything around him is a threat. His thin brown hair often falls over his forehead, and his skinny shoulders and sluggish gait make him look as if he's trying to hide from the entire world. A few times I noticed bruises on Jason's body. They were of various sizes scattered across Jason's small body, from his arms and skinny legs to his back. They looked like patches of painful color, telling a story that the boy could not speak aloud. The boy had to endure harm that no one should ever experience, especially at such an innocent age. On another visit, I saw Jason walking unsteadily, each small step wobbling as if he couldn't keep his balance, his skinny legs trembling every time they touched the ground. Every time Jason lifted his foot, a look of pain briefly appeared on his pale face, as if each movement was a torment. I spoke with Elton about it, but all I received in return was indifference and a request to stay away from his family. What is called a family, yet lacks love and protection. I didn't go to Elton's house for a month after that. The messages from the children wondering about my absence made it impossible for me to hold back any longer. One early autumn afternoon, I drove to Elton's house, bringing along some new toys. As I got out of the car, my gaze was immediately drawn to the scene behind the house. Elton and Larissa were bent over, seemingly burying something. A small black sack lay at their feet, and their movements were full of secrecy. Looking through the window, I saw the children playing inside, but Jason was nowhere to be found. A sense of unease overwhelmed me. Sitting in the car, I called the police and explained everything I had witnessed. Only a few hours later, the police arrived at the house. Elton and Larissa appeared panicked, but tried to remain calm. When the police dug up the sack, I couldn't look directly, but nothing could have prepared me for the shock that followed. Inside was the tiny, cold body of Jason, curled up, covered in bruises. The results of the autopsy that followed only deepened my pain. Jason's bones were broken in multiple places, and some had healed before the boy passed away. These injuries were not accidents. They were the result of prolonged torture. Elton and Larissa were arrested immediately and sentenced to 28 and 25 years in prison, respectively, for the horrific acts they had committed. On a windy afternoon, I stood silently before Jason's small grave. I thought about the boy's fearful eyes, about the faint smile he would give me every time I visited. The remaining 6 children were taken to a care center, and every month I would visit and bring gifts for them. They all deserved to be loved and protected. The horrifying case occurred in December 2017 in Cleveland, Ohio, when the police received a call from Scott Rodriguez, the brother of Christopher Rodriguez, reporting the death of a 5-year-old victim named Jordan. He was buried in the backyard by his mother, Larissa Rodriguez, and her boyfriend, Christopher. After being interrogated, Larissa admitted that Jordan had died on September 21st, 2017. Afterward, she and Christopher buried his body in the backyard. The investigation by the police and FBI confirmed Jordan's body on December 19, 2017. The forensic investigation revealed that Jordan had multiple broken bones before his death, with the injuries untreated. Jordan was a special child, autistic, and in need of special care, but he did not receive the attention he deserved from his mother and her boyfriend. The case sparked outrage and heartache in the public, highlighting the brutal crime and the failure to protect children from abuse.
My husband's back after being gone for 6 months, but I know it's not him. My husband Nathan's been gone for 6 months. Even with everything the police, family, and neighbors did, they hadn't found him. Not even a tiny clue. My family went through a serious mess, especially my mother-in-law. She had to go to the ER 4 times because she kept passing out. The calls from the police started slowing down, and the missing person flyers kept getting taken down and put back up because the weather messed them up. My family slowly had to accept that Nathan was gone. Then, out of nowhere, one day, my husband showed up while I was out in the yard taking care of the sunflowers. That was Nathan's favorite flower. I started planting them after he left. Now my husband's back, looking healthy and all, still wearing the same clothes he had on the day he disappeared. I was totally stunned. Couldn't tell if I was dreaming or if it was real, and I had no clue what I was feeling at that moment. Nathan ran over to hug me, yelling to get everyone in the family's attention. No surprise, my parents-in-law and 2 brothers-in-law were excited. Everybody was crying and smiling all at once, but honestly, I felt totally emotionless because I just knew this wasn't my husband. Only I could feel it, and only I knew it wasn't Nathan. I always had this weird feeling mixed with suspicion and caution. My family threw a party to welcome Nathan back and to thank God for bringing him home safe. We also invited the neighbors to the party. The kids were pumped for the party, running around everywhere with desserts in their hands. One of them ran into Nathan and got buttercream all over his shirt. Nathan just smiled, patted the kid's head, and patiently wiped the stain off. No, my husband had never been into kids, which is why we still don't have any after almost 10 years of being married. Where have you been all this time, Nathan? Everyone's missed you and been so worried, my mother-in-law said, getting all emotional at the party. My husband walked over, gently hugged my mom, and kissed her on the forehead. That had never happened before. He was never that affectionate. Mom, I'm here. I just ran into a little trouble. Then he suddenly turned to me with a slight smile. Well, maybe not just a little, Nathan hinted. So where have you been and what have you been up to? My father-in-law asked. I was in a really dark, freezing place, Dad. My job was fighting off the god of death and demons. Nathan laughed out loud after saying that, and everyone joined in, thinking he was just really good at cracking jokes. As for me, I froze up. Felt like electricity was shooting through my nerves. Nathan's smile and eyes made me shake. I brought another test with a big smile on my face. Give it a try. I made it just to celebrate your return. Nathan grabbed the heart-shaped peanut butter cookie, popped it in his mouth, and chewed it up like it was the best thing ever. It's great, honey. I smiled awkwardly, because my husband's allergic to peanut butter. Just smelling it, he'd bolt like his life depended on it. This wasn't my husband. If anyone thinks that big events can change how people act and their habits, I totally agree. Those two signs weren't enough for me to be 100% sure, so I was still watching closely. Honey, can you grab me some sugar cubes? Since when did you start drinking tea with sugar? Didn't you always say that sugar ruins the real flavor of tea? Just a little. I want to try a new flavor. A little, Nathan said. 4 sugar cubes for a small cup of tea, which has never happened before. I opened up to Nathan about a bunch of stuff that went down. While you were gone, Santa was so worried. She kept going to the police station to check in about finding you. You must have had a rough time while I was away. Thank you so much. Nathan gave me a sweet kiss on the forehead and didn't say a thing when I mentioned Santa, my best friend and his little fling. If it were before, Nathan would have turned harsh every time I said Santa's name. He defended his girl no matter what. I knew that gross couple had been seeing each other for over 2 years, but I was set on not getting a divorce. I'm not leaving, and there's no way I'm splitting my stuff with anyone. Nathan hugged me, and when I caught a glimpse through the gap in his shirt with the top 2 buttons undone, my heart started racing. Nathan used to have a long scar on his left chest, but now it's gone. I sat there looking at the person across from me. His face was familiar, but all I felt inside was suspicion and a weird vibe. What was even crazier was that my heart was just full of hate. Let's have kids, Nathan whispering in my ear totally surprised me. I cried and couldn't hold back my feelings. I got up from Nathan's arms, dashed into the room, and locked the door behind me. I had to sneak out tonight to dig up the sunflower pots in the backyard and see if he was still down there.
I'm a 36-year-old single programmer living in Florida, having a messy look. That night, I pulled a late one, working till 10 p.m. to wrap up a new project. My stomach was growling like crazy, so I walked over to the In-N-Out by my office to grab some dinner. After chilling and eating for like 30 minutes, I went out front of the In-N-Out to grab a cab home. Empty, quiet streets, late at night, really get people in their feels. I ended up thinking about my job and the whole single life thing. Get lost, bitch, some guy was yelling and cussing, which totally caught my attention. Right by the little alley next to In-N-Out, a couple was having some drama, but it was all kinds of toxic. The guy wasn't just cussing her out, he was also pushing her around pretty badly. I was shocked, took a sec to think, and then just kept quiet. Figured it was their business. Get out of my life! Why are you so damn stubborn? The guy was totally losing it. Weirdly, the girl wasn't crying or acting hurt. She just kept saying sorry and barely pushing back. I couldn't just ignore it anymore, so I walked up and said, "Shouldn't do that to a woman, fam." The guy stopped as soon as he saw me. He went from all pissed off to kinda happy and confused, like he was about to say something, but couldn't. But in the end, the guy just took off, totally surprising me. He hauled ass, like he was trying to get away from something really bad. "You good?" I turned to the girl and helped her up. She was tiny and skinny, wearing a loose dress, with her long messy hair all in her face. After I helped her up,
The girl got to her feet, said thanks, and brushed her hair out of her face. She had a ton of makeup on. Her eyes were super big, but her lips were the total opposite. Her face, neck, and arms were covered in a bunch of scars, long and short. Some were still bleeding from the stuff her boyfriend did earlier. Her breath was heavy and kind of forced, like she was pulling the person in front of her deeper into a trash can. Without thinking, I covered my nose and took a step back. The girl grinned and walked up to me, saying, "Thanks a lot." My stomach did a flip. No problem. And I bolted out of there before I tossed all the In-N-Out I just ate. I got home with that awful smell still stuck in my nose and feeling sick the whole time. I jumped in the shower real quick to shake off the tiredness and gross feeling. The next day was another long one, so I decided to take the bus home instead of driving. As soon as I got on the bus, I was shocked to see the woman from yesterday. She flashed a big smile when she saw me and waved. I was gonna turn around and get off the bus, but it was too late. The doors shut and the bus took off. I picked a seat as far from that woman as I could, but her eyes were still on me, and her hand was still waving with that weird smile. Everyone else on the bus was staring and talking about me, so I figured I'd just get off at the next stop and grab a cab home. After that day, I stopped taking the bus, but that was just the start. The next few days were full of crazy, creepy obsessions. The next day at work, that girl was waiting for me right in front of the office. As soon as she spotted me from a distance, she ran over all excited and eager. I froze for a sec, totally freaking out. Why the hell is she here? Facing the girl, I tried to calm my breath and keep my face cool. "I've already said you're welcome, so we're done here. I hope this is the last time we cross paths." I just said my piece and rushed into the office before I could even catch my breath. That night when I left, I couldn't see the girl anywhere. I let out a big sigh of relief. As soon as I walked in and flipped on the light, my phone buzzed. "Hi, it's me. Come hang out for a bit." The voice on the other end was a girl, all soft and sweet. I grabbed the phone, opened the door all confused. "Why are you here?" I said, totally surprised, while the girl just waved, all happy. Seeing the infected, gross wounds on her face totally made me feel sick. "How do you even know my address and number? Please, I'm seriously asking you to stay away from me, alright?" "What if I say no?" She challenged me with this sweet and cheerful vibe. She was getting more and more under my skin, pushing my patience to the limit. I stormed into the house and slammed the door, thinking I'd give her one last chance before calling the police. That last chance was the next day, right in front of the In-N-Out, just like the first time I ran into her. "Anthony!" She even knew my name and yelled it out. "Get lost!" I yelled, totally pissed off and fed up. The more she saw me lose it, the more she seemed to get a kick out of it, giggling and slowly getting closer. I couldn't control myself anymore, and for the first time, I actually snapped at a woman. I yanked her hair, all gross and dirty, and shouted, "Get lost! How many times do I gotta say it?" Then I went off on her just like that guy did that night, and I was the one watching it all go down. A strong shove sent me flying, and someone yelled, "Knock it off, jerk!" A young guy. I was all mixed up at first, then got pumped and ran off real quick, because I found someone to take her place. After I'd bounced, the girl got up, flashed a big smile at the guy, and you could see a couple more fresh scars on her face, bleeding. I'm really into exercising and playing sports, but since I spend most of my day working, Running at night seems like the best option. In an evening, after wrapping up a ton of work, I grabbed a quick snack, changed into my running gear, and headed down to the park below my apartment to blow off some steam. The park was empty at the time, but suddenly, I heard a noise behind me. I instinctively turned my head and was startled to see a tall, dark figure running behind me. I started running faster, and my heart was racing out of control. But I could feel the person behind me getting closer and closer. My mind started racing with all sorts of worst-case scenarios. The more I ran, the faster I went, all flustered and panicked, with my heart pounding so hard it was tough to breathe. Not daring to turn around, I glanced to the side and saw the person's dark shadow falling onto the road right next to me. There was a couple being intimate up ahead, so I didn't hesitate to run over and shout for help. The girl in the beautiful white dress got up and walked over to me with a surprised look on her face. I gasped, turned around, and saw someone in a tracksuit running past. "Are you okay?" the girl in the white dress asked, looking worried. Now that I looked closer, she was really beautiful. She must have been on a date with her boyfriend. I gave a shy smile and thanked her. I curiously looked toward the boyfriend, but his face was hidden in the darkness, so I couldn't see him clearly. I thanked the girl again and left. Deciding to wrap up my jog, I was shocked to realize that my phone was missing. I froze for a few seconds trying to remember, and then realized I must have dropped it while trying to escape from my pursuer. I immediately ran back the way I came to find my phone. After searching around but still not finding it, I suddenly remembered the smartwatch I was wearing. Following the signal from the watch, I headed to the children's playground. But I had never run to this area before. Moreover, it was darker than the other areas. The playground equipment looked eerie and distorted in the darkness, creating strange shapes. The wind whistling through the dry branches, the chirping of insects, and even the weird sound of footsteps echoing in the dark. All of this turned what was usually a fun and lovely area into a place of horror and fear. I checked the signal on the watch again, and it definitely showed it was here. As I got closer to the playground, I heard music playing and was relieved to have found my phone. After wandering around the slide and seesaw for a while, all I could hear was the music from the phone. I turned around to look at the two swings a few meters away. I screamed in surprise, my heart racing and my head spinning. Someone was sitting on the swing on the left. "Who is it?" I said, my voice trembling like I was about to cry. That person didn't answer. The swing kept moving back and forth, the chains creaking, and the sound of water droplets slowly dripping made my legs feel weak. It looked like a girl in a long dress, but her back was turned, so I couldn't see her face clearly. My phone rang, and it was coming from that girl. She must have picked it up. "I dropped my phone with the pink case. Have you seen it around here?" The silence was still there, and it was haunting and unsettling beyond description. I slowly approached the girl. The phone rang even louder. Suddenly, the phone fell to the ground with a loud clatter, breaking the eerie silence. My whole body jumped. I quickly ran over and grabbed the phone right at the girl's feet. Holding the phone in my hand, I didn't have time to feel relieved. The phone was covered in a thick, fishy liquid. I was hit by that horrible smell for a few seconds. Looking down at where I'd just picked up the phone, I saw drops of water still flowing down, and the girl didn't react at all. I trembled, turned on the flashlight on my phone, and shined it toward the girl. She had tears all over her face, neck, and chest, and her eyes were wide open in panic. Her red dress was soaked, and each drop of liquid slowly flowed from her feet to the ground. It was the girl who had been with her boyfriend earlier. I ran as fast as I could, putting all my strength into it. I knew I had to get out of there quickly because that murderer could still be nearby. When I got to the security room, I collapsed and quickly told them everything in 2 sentences. The security guard and I stayed in the room until the police arrived. I told the police everything that happened, especially about that tall man. He was the top suspect in the case, but unfortunately, I couldn't see his face clearly. But on the flip side, he knew my face very well. He also knew where I was and might be lurking around. I asked the police for round-the-clock protection. I installed more security cameras, alarms, and a more modern door lock system to make sure everything was safe. For 2 months, I lived in fear and confusion and hardly left the house. By the 3rd month, the police announced they'd caught the guy while he was hiding in a neighboring state. I moved in with my parents because I felt scared and panicked whenever I was alone. I avoided all dark, dimly lit areas, parks, and even playgrounds. Once, when I went to the supermarket near my house and was playing on the counter, the cashier's eyes gave me the creeps. He was really tall, had dark skin, thick eyebrows, and was always wearing a pretty intense frown. He looked at me with a look of suspicion and anger. We've only been in this new house for a few months now. The house is out on the edge of town, not many people around, and there aren't a lot of amenities, but the air is really fresh. My room's on the 1st floor, near the living room, and my parents are upstairs. I picked this room because it's got a big window that looks out over the lake behind the house. I always leave the window open, and the breeze brings in the smell of flowers and grass, which makes me love the room even more. One night, I was up on my phone with my dog until after 2 a.m. I was watching a funny video and laughing when Pop suddenly jumped off the bed, ran to the window, and started barking like crazy. I jumped up and tried to get Pop to stop, or else my parents would wake up and realize I was still up, and they'd take my phone away. "Pop, stop it right now!" I growled, but I barely whispered. At first I thought Pop was barking at his reflection in the window on the left. But when I looked again, Pop was staring angrily at the right side of the window. I took a closer look, and it was like a jolt of electricity went through me. Outside the window, a pair of blue eyes were staring right at me. It took me a few seconds to process it all, and I tried to act like everything was normal. I signaled Pop to be quiet, picked up the glass of water, and pretended it was empty. I slowly got out of bed and opened the door, and went to the kitchen to get some water. "Pop, let's go get some water. You like snacks, don't you?" I swear, I had to keep my fear in check just to sound as normal as possible. I didn't even have time to worry about whether Pop was following me or not. I just rushed up to the 2nd floor. I knocked on my parents' door over and over, freaking out and saying someone was lurking outside, probably a thief. "Calm down, Michael. I set up a sensor light. If there's any movement, the light will turn on." Dad was lying on the bed, sounding pretty calm as he answered me in a sleepy voice. When my mom heard my dad's explanation, her face relaxed too, and she let out a big sigh of relief. "Why aren't you asleep yet, Michael?" Mom suddenly switched her attitude and expression. I was startled and said, "I was thirsty, so I went to get some water. Good night, Mom and Dad." I quickly left. When I got back to the room, Pop was still sitting there, intently watching out the window. I went over and patted his head, saying, "It's nothing, buddy. Let's go to sleep." Looking out the window, everything seemed normal. I must have just been seeing things earlier. Pop was still sitting there, and I just went to bed and fell asleep pretty quickly. The next few days were normal, and I kept leaving the window open, just like before. I officially started summer vacation and planned to make a bunch of great memories with my parents and Pop in the new house. With my dad's okay, I'd often swim with Pop in the lake behind the house every afternoon. A few times I invited friends over to camp by the lake overnight, and everything went great. About 2 weeks into the vacation, one night, I stayed up late playing games with my friends. Suddenly, Pop's growling got my attention. He looked toward the window again, his eyes angry, showing his teeth and growling like he was ready to fight at any moment. I took off my headphones and said, "Pop, what's wrong this time?" I don't know why my heart was racing so fast at that moment. I looked towards the window and saw a pair of blue eyes. I stared carefully and kept looking back multiple times. But it was pretty dark outside, so I wasn't sure if I was seeing things correctly. I didn't dare to stand up and check, imagining that something terrible might happen to me. I felt pretty confident because I remembered what my dad said, but I was curious about Pop's reaction. "Michael, are you playing games again?" Mom's voice startled both me and Pop. I didn't answer because I heard noises coming from outside. Looking out the window, I was shocked to see a black shadow moving toward the lake. Pop lost it and started barking loudly. "Michael, I know what you're up to. Open the door now." I looked away from the window for a few seconds, and when I looked back, the black shadow had disappeared. I rushed to the window and looked around, but there was no one there. Mom's knocking got more and more urgent, so I ran to open the door and got a tongue lashing. But I couldn't focus on what my mom was saying, as I kept glancing toward the window, and the shadow of that creature seemed to linger in my mind. The next morning, I went to find my dad and told him everything with a real serious look. My dad was skeptical about what I said, so he decided to check the sensor light, and it had been broken for a while. The thought of some weird creature following me so many times really shook me up. I went into detail with my parents about its eyes and appearance, and how it suddenly vanished near the lake. "Is it possible you were just hallucinating because you stayed up too late playing games, Michael?" Mom's question made my dad hesitate and look at me with a questioning look. "But Pop, how could a dog's senses be wrong?" I immediately argued back, and my parents just looked at each other in silence and didn't say anything more. From that day on, I kept the windows shut and the curtains drawn all the time. My dad also installed a bunch of sensor lights and alarm bells around the house, just like I wanted. But I still couldn't relax and ended up dealing with constant insomnia. Seeing that my physical and mental health was getting worse, my parents took me to see a psychologist. The police also came by several times at night to search the house, but they didn't find anything unusual. One day, I suggested to my parents that we move to a different place. That same day, the local news reported that they'd finally arrested a thief who had been on the run for months. He'd committed a total of 36 robberies, and what stood out to me were his striking blue eyes. My parents thought it was very likely that I had seen him, but I still wasn't completely satisfied and didn't feel fully reassured. Following my wishes again, my parents decided to fill in the pond behind the house and build a big warehouse. While draining the pond, they found a bag and a mask that thieves often use. So, he probably jumped into the pond to escape that night. Since the pond wasn't very deep and he was tall, it makes sense he could have done that. I slept better and made sure to lock the door carefully every.
Welcome back to MHS, Midnight Horror Stories. I know that many of you turn to these videos as a gentle way to unwind and ease into sleep. So, before you drift off tonight, could you help me with a small favor? Just leave a quick interaction, a comment, a like, or let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. My goal is to hit around 200 likes within the first 24 hours. Simple actions like these help YouTube appreciate the content and spread the show to more people. Now then, let's dive into tonight's horror stories. A few months ago, I would have thought that stopping my car in the rain was just a kind gesture. But just a few hours later, I realized I had invited the man who wanted to kill me into my home. The story began a few months ago. I had just driven away from Mountain View Cemetery in Fremont, California. I would have stayed longer, but I noticed it was about to rain. I drove for a while, and it started pouring. As my car went around a bend, I saw a figure on the side of the road. It was a man, waving for a ride. He was shivering from the cold. He must have been standing there for a long time. I slowed down and pulled over. He quickly ran over and opened the car door, soaking the seat with rainwater. He had a thin face, a bushy beard, deep-set eyes, and looked like he hadn't slept in days. I handed him a towel to dry off. He nodded in thanks and took it. I started driving again. Throughout the trip, I tried to make some small talk, asking where he was from or what he did for work, but I only got shakes of his head or short answers. He just kept staring out the window, his hands tightly clasped together. As we neared my house, I asked, "I'm almost home. Where do you want me to drop you off?" He turned to look at me, his eyes looking tired. "Could you let me come in and rest for a bit? I've been walking all day." I hesitated. I never take strangers home, but it was still raining hard and he looked genuinely exhausted. "Okay, but I can only let you stay for a little while." When we got inside, I showed him a seat in the living room and went to get him a set of old clothes to change into. Then I went to the kitchen to make a hot cup of tea. While waiting for the water to boil, I remembered his face. There was something familiar about it, as if I had seen him somewhere before, but I couldn't place it. "I forgot to ask your name," I called out, but there was no answer. I peeked into the living room. No one was there. I turned off the stove and went out. The chair was still wet from his clothes, but he was gone. Confused, I walked around the house, calling out to him. I went upstairs. The bathroom was empty. The office was empty. Finally, I stopped in front of the bedroom door. The door was ajar, even though I was sure I had closed it earlier. I pushed the door open and froze. He was standing in front of the vanity, holding a picture frame that I always kept there. It was a photo of Mary and me. There were other pictures of her on the table. "You loved her so much?" His voice had completely changed. It was cold and full of hatred. He turned around, and we looked at each other closely, and then the memory flooded back. Gary Williams, Mary's ex-husband. He looked like a different person, but he was sentenced to 20 years in prison. He should be in jail. "Gary? How are you?" I whispered. "Surprised, Dave? You thought I'd sit in prison for 20 years? I took a deep breath. "I didn't steal Mary from you. When we started, you two were almost done with the divorce." "What the hell is a divorce? She was still my wife. You had an affair with her, you bastard," he roared. Gary pulled a knife from his jacket. "Now it's your turn." He lunged, and a struggle began. The blade cut through my right shoulder, showing the white bone through the deep wound, and blood started gushing out. Gary became more aggressive and continued to attack. At that moment, I had no other choice. I lunged toward the wardrobe, opened the top drawer, and pulled out a gun, my hand shaking as I released the safety catch. I pulled the trigger. The first shot hit his shoulder, and he still advanced. I pulled the trigger again. The second shot hit his chest. Gary stopped, then crumpled to the floor. I checked his pulse. Gary was dead. I was silent for a few minutes, then called the police to turn myself in. Gary Williams escaped from prison 3 days ago. He killed a guard during his escape. We were hunting for him, an officer told me. The trial took place a month later. I was fully acquitted. The judge confirmed that I had acted in legal self-defense. I didn't feel happy, but I felt incredibly relieved. Right after the trial, I went back to the cemetery to visit Mary. The California afternoon sun peeked through the clouds. I knelt before Mary's grave and placed a bouquet of white roses, her favorite flower. I told Mary what had happened and then burst into tears. It had been almost 2 years since I lost her. If I had been more decisive that day, not letting her go to meet her cruel ex-husband, Gary, we might have had a happy family with children. A light breeze blew through the cemetery, causing dry leaves to fly up and then fall onto her grave. I sat there until it got dark. On the way home, I didn't stop for anyone else. If I had been more careful when choosing a place to live that day, I probably wouldn't have woken up on an operating table. It started 3 months ago when I decided to leave Cleveland, Ohio. My job had fallen apart, and my rent was piling up. I needed a fresh start somewhere with a lower cost of living. Dayton seemed like a good fit. It was a quiet city, and still in the same state, so I could visit family. The first thing I needed to do was find a place to live. I scrolled through apartment and rental pages, and most of them were out of my reach. Then I saw a post looking for a roommate. It was a 2-bedroom apartment on Oak Street, near downtown, with a rent that was half the average price. The apartment currently had one occupant, a guy named Vince, who made the post. We exchanged a few simple messages, and I quickly moved in with him. On moving day, I parked my rental truck in front of a 3-story red brick building. The apartment was on the 2nd floor. Vince opened the door after the first knock. He was tall and thin with long brown hair that almost covered his eyes. The first thing that struck me was Vince's unusually wide smile. His voice was a little high-pitched and slightly shaky. His hand was cold and clammy when we shook hands. Vince didn't say much about himself, and I was hesitant to ask. The apartment was bigger than I expected. A large living room with a window overlooking the street. The kitchen was small but functional. My bedroom had a single bed and a wardrobe. There was a faint, musty, foul smell. I figured it was because the room hadn't been used. The first few days passed quite peacefully. I worked the afternoon and evening shift at a restaurant near downtown, usually getting home around 11 p.m. Vince was usually in his room with the door closed. The musty, foul odor I noticed at first didn't go away. It became more and more pronounced. I opened the windows and lit scented candles, but it didn't help. The smell was especially strong near Vince's room. On a day off when Vince was also home, I couldn't stand the smell anymore, so I asked him about it. Vince, who was in the kitchen, turned back with that familiar smile and explained that he was working on a dissection research project on small animals, like rats and birds. He wanted to understand their internal structure. Better rats than people, right? Vince chuckled softly and walked into his room. I stood there watching him go, thinking my roommate was incredibly strange. After living with Vince for almost a month, I decided to find another place. I had saved enough money for a security deposit. I told Vince about it, and he didn't say anything, but he did mention he was going home to visit his family that weekend. I figured he wasn't happy about me moving out, so I just kept quiet. I breathed a sigh of relief, finally getting a quiet night to myself. That evening, as I was sitting on the sofa, I was startled by a sound at the front door. I turned off the TV and listened. It was a key turning in the lock. Maybe Vince had come home early. I stood up, ready to greet him. The door opened, but instead of Vince, I saw a tall, dark figure in a hoodie, his face covered by a white mask. Before I could react, he lunged. I tried to run to the kitchen, but my foot caught the edge of the table, and I tumbled to the floor. In the next second, a strong blow to my head sent me into darkness. When I woke up, I found myself tied tightly to a metal table. I was in a small room with no windows, lit by a single overhead bulb. The concrete walls were bare and damp. The stench was so overwhelming it made me want to throw up. Around the table were metal shelves full of glass jars. Inside were dark brown fragments, suspended in a clear fluid. On another table, I saw surgical tools, scalpels, pliers, scissors. My mouth was taped shut, leaving me to only make muffled sounds of helplessness. From a dark corner, a voice began to hum a sweet melody that, in this context, was horrifying. The singer emerged from the shadows and walked closer. I couldn't believe my eyes. It was Vince with his familiar smile. But this time, it was more grotesque, with wide, bulging eyes filled with a look of sheer delight. Better people than rats, right, Mike? Without a word, he picked up a folding knife from the tool table and opened it. Vince placed the tip of the blade on the skin of my stomach. I tensed, struggling in desperation. The blade began to cut into my skin, and a searing pain hit me, feeling the warm blood ooze out. I was helpless, and so desperate I started to cry. Suddenly, I felt the rope on my right wrist loosen slightly, probably because I was sweating so much. I tried to twist my wrist. Vince had turned away to grab a tool, mumbling something about a perfect specimen. After a few minutes of struggling, my right hand finally came free. I immediately sat up, grabbed a knife from the tool table, and stabbed him in the shoulder. Vince screamed, stumbling backward, clutching his shoulder. He became enraged at the sight of his own blood, yelling hysterically. I quickly untied myself and ran. After I got out, I realized that the horror room was Vince's bedroom. I pressed hard on the wound to stop the bleeding, staggering down the deserted street. I saw a light at a nearby house and crawled toward it. I pounded on the door. A middle-aged woman opened it. She was in a panic when she saw my state. "Please, call the police." I managed to give her my apartment address before collapsing. I woke up in the hospital. A police detective was sitting next to my bed. He told me Vince had been arrested. In the basement, they found more than 20 glass jars containing body parts. Not just from animals. They believed some were human, as they also found photos. Some of them were of victims who had gone missing several years ago. According to forensic reports and medical records, Vince had been diagnosed with paranoid disorder and dissociative personality disorder, but he had never followed through with treatment. He was reclusive, rarely socialized, and had a tendency to become obsessed with human anatomy and controlling others' bodies. The untreated mental illness was the cause of his insane behavior and horrifying crimes. I was in the hospital for 3 weeks. My wound wasn't deep, but I lost a lot of blood and needed time to recover psychologically. After being discharged, I found a new place to live. This time, I was much more careful. I met the landlord in person, checked all the paperwork, and talked to the neighbors before making a decision. Vincent Miller was sentenced to life in prison without parole. During the trial, he still had that grotesque smile, as if the whole thing was just an interesting game. I know I was lucky that I didn't become the next living specimen in his horrifying collection. When promises of love turn into a nightmare, I'm forced to fight to regain my life and control. I'm Beth, 32 years old. This story happened when I was living in Akron, Ohio. I had a very romantic time dating Kane. He was an engineer at a local company, had a steady income, and was polite to everyone. Kane proposed after 6 months of dating, and I immediately said yes. The first month of our marriage was truly like a paradise. Kane always took care of me, cooked and cleaned the house. He would often hug me from behind and whisper, "You're everything I need." I felt safe in his arms, believing we would grow old together in our small house in the Cleveland suburbs. Everything changed in the second month of our marriage. I woke up with a start to find Kane sitting on a chair next to the bed, holding a small pair of scissors. Scattered on the bed were strands of blonde hair. I immediately sat up. It was my hair. "Kane?" I asked, my voice trembling, my hands instinctively going to my head. One side of my hair had been cut short, close to the scalp. "Good morning, my love," Kane said, staring at me without blinking. "I've been sitting here all night watching you sleep. You sleep so beautifully, especially when I'm cutting your hair." "Why did you do that?" I almost screamed, my voice cracking as I was about to cry. Kane grinned, waving the scissors in his hand. "You look so much cuter now." "Now let's eat breakfast," Kane suddenly yelled. Before I could react, he shoved a large piece of bread into my mouth. I choked, trying to push his hand away, but Kane was stronger. He continued to force bread into my mouth. "Kane, stop!" I tried to yell through the bread, but the sound was just an unintelligible groan. I couldn't breathe. My strength was fading, and my vision began to blur. Kane continued with an expression of delight. The last sound I heard was his insane laughter before everything went dark. I woke up, squinting at the bright lights. I was in a hospital. My throat was sore and dry. Kane sat on the chair next to my bed, his shoulders shaking. "Kane!" I thought he was crying until I saw his face. Kane was smiling, his eyes sparkling like a child who had just received their favorite gift. "You're awake?" he said, feigning concern. "If you're unconscious for too long, I can't play with you anymore, my love." He leaned close to my ear. "Next time you feel like you're about to pass out, let me know in advance. I'll let you rest for a bit." I shivered at my husband's attitude. "Why? Why did you do that?" Kane was silent for a moment, his eyes staring at me. Then he grinned again. "I've been waiting for this moment for a long time." I stared at Kane in disbelief. Was this really the man who had promised to protect me for the rest of my life? Why had he become like this? Just then, a doctor walked in and said the situation wasn't too serious, but still recommended I stay in the hospital for another night for observation. Kane immediately stood up and squeezed my shoulder tightly. "That's not necessary, doctor. My wife is fine. We're going home." Before I could say anything, Kane pulled me out of the hospital. The next few days were hell on earth. Kane no longer hid his true nature. Every morning I woke up, I didn't know what he would do. One time, he put a lot of salt in a glass and made me drink it all. Another time, he tied me to a chair and dripped cold water on my head for an hour. I tried to escape multiple times, but Kane always found me and dragged me back. He locked all the doors, hid the keys and my phone, and was always by my side to monitor me. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. I cried and threatened to call the police. Kane jumped up, his eyes bloodshot, and he yelled, "Shut up. Do you know how happy I am? Don't ruin my mood." In the next second, he calmed down, gently hugged me, and leaned close to my ear. His breath sent a shiver down my spine. "Thank you for agreeing to marry me. Now I can play with you however I want. I've thought of so many fun ways to spend every day with you." "Why?" I whispered, tears streaming down my cheeks. Kane licked a tear from the corner of my eye, his smile turning insane. "You always smiled. I hated seeing that. From now on, I'll make you cry every day. Your tears are the most delicious thing to me." His insane laughter echoed through the room. I knew if I didn't act immediately, I would die in this house. I grabbed everything within reach, a table lamp, a wedding photo frame, a glass of water, and threw them hard at Kane's face. He staggered back, covering his face with his hands. That was my only chance. I ran to the window, opened it, and jumped out. It was my only option, because I was sure Kane had locked all the doors. Knowing the great risk, I jumped without a second thought. I landed on the first floor awning and then jumped again to the ground. The fall made me roll a few times, feeling pain all over my body. I heard Kane yelling for me to come back. There wasn't much time. I got up, limped to a neighbor's house, and asked for help. The neighbors called the police. I sobbed, telling the police everything, my body a clear and convincing piece of evidence. They immediately issued a temporary protective order, and helped me with the divorce proceedings. The next month, I was treated in the hospital for a broken arm and shoulder and severe psychological trauma. At the trial, I wasn't present. I couldn't face Kane. Instead, I followed the trial online. It's a shame. I still have so many things I wanted to do with you. That was the only thing Kane said during the entire trial. I burst into tears, feeling utterly disgusted. What shocked me even more was that after the divorce, I found out Kane had been married before. His first wife had taken her own life. The police concluded it was depression, but the truth behind her death was probably also due to Kane's insanity and cruelty. Kane wasn't looking for a life partner. He was looking for a toy to satisfy his brutality. After 2 years of psychological therapy, I can finally sleep soundly without waking up with a start. I've moved to Columbus and started a new life. I understand that freedom and peace are the most precious things, but not in the arms of or dependent on someone else. They are within myself.
I'm Aiden, and I've just returned after more than 3 months of treatment for psychological trauma from a psychiatric hospital. The cause of everything started with the girlfriend I fell for at first sight, Agatha. She is 3 years older than me, a woman of extraordinary beauty who made it impossible for me to look away. She had large eyes, a small face, long, shiny blonde hair, and a perfectly proportioned figure. I don't know how many times I silently thanked God for meeting and having Agatha. Not only was Agatha beautiful, but she was also very friendly, kind, and an excellent cook. I really wanted to quickly organize a wedding with her and was incredibly excited, imagining our future daughter. But nothing is perfect. Agatha had a very strange and incomprehensible flaw. She always criticized her own body. I completely understood when a girl complained about being overweight or being unhappy with a certain part of her body. But with Agatha, it wasn't just insecurity. She hated herself. Agatha always used terrible words to describe herself, to the point where I imagined her as a monster. Agatha, you are the most beautiful woman. No, Aiden, look at me, she interrupted. These eyes, this nose, are so redundant and ugly. Even these feet, too. There are many people who are not as lucky and well off as us. Stop those silly thoughts. I'm serious. Seeing that my attitude was quite tense, Agatha stood up and left. I really love Agatha, but the more I love her, the more I can't understand her. Things won't be so scary when everything stops at words. Agatha gradually lives the role of a disabled person in a happy and enjoyable state of mind. She is no longer meticulous about her appearance, does not wear makeup or hair. Instead, her face is tightly attached to a pair of sunglasses. Agatha groped everything and asked for help from me because she thought she was blind. Furniture in the house is constantly falling apart and getting damaged. From surprise and helplessness, I gradually turned into discomfort and anger. But Agatha ignored everything. I was even more shocked when I read Agatha's search history. How to remove eyes quickly and with the least pain. Immediately, I pulled Agatha's hand into the dressing room, took off her sunglasses, and let her look straight into the mirror. Look! Why did you make yourself so pathetic? I continued to turn on my phone, which had a beautiful picture of Agatha as the wallpaper. Do you remember how beautiful you used to be? Agatha remained silent, staring into the mirror for a long time, and then slowly closed her eyes and groped her way out. I wanted to scream out loud. If I could, I'd love to see what on earth was going through that small mind of hers. In the following days, I tried to convince Agatha to see a doctor. I was sure my girlfriend was dealing with some kind of mental issue. Agatha would refuse to talk if I mentioned seeing a doctor, and she would even stop eating. I tried to handle it by inviting the doctor to our house, but she locked herself in her room and refused to meet with him. That evening, Agatha and I sat down to have a serious conversation with each other. I'll be going on a business trip for a week. Will you be okay? Of course. It is not the first time you've gone on a business trip, Aiden. Agatha, you know what I'm trying to talk about. Is that really your purpose in life? Agatha looked at me and remained silent. My purpose and dream is to have a happy family with you. I've always imagined a future where we have a daughter as beautiful as you. But Agatha, please, I interrupted her. Please, tell me what your real dream is. I wish I didn't have these eyes. My girlfriend's words felt like a heavy force tightening around my heart. I hate having to see everything, Aiden. I turned and walked into the office, and that entire night, I thought deeply about everything that happened. The next morning, I left the house early to go on my business trip. I left Agatha a handwritten letter asking both of us to reflect on everything and have another conversation when I returned. Throughout the week, I was on my business trip. There were no calls or messages from Agatha. I called her several times, but all I received were a few superficial words. I secretly installed cameras in the living room and bedroom without Agatha knowing. I knew that what I was doing was wrong, but I couldn't bring myself to leave her alone. Agatha's crazy actions, pretending to be blind, continued to increase over time, which stressed me out immensely. My insomnia was also getting worse day by day. On the 5th night of my business trip, unable to sleep, I looked back at the happy photos of me and Agatha, and I cried. A notification came through from the camera app, and I immediately pressed to view it. The screen switched to the app interface, and Agatha's painful screams echoed loudly, causing me to jump up in shock. She didn't appear in the frame, but the sound of her screams and the chaotic scene in the room made me panic. "Agatha!" I kept shouting through the phone screen, my hands trembling as I adjusted the camera's view. Suddenly, Agatha sat up with a loud laugh. Her long hair was disheveled, her clothes were torn, and her face had deep, hollowed eyes from which a lot of blood was dripping. Agatha's hands were raised high, two objects that were difficult to define. They were round, slimy with liquid, constantly flowing down. Her laughter gradually lost control, becoming frantic and delighted. I threw my phone away and clutched my head, screaming loudly. After calming down a bit, I quickly picked up my phone and called the police. That very night, I booked the earliest flight to return and arrived home by 9 a.m. the next day. After consulting with the doctor, I learned that Agatha had body integrity identity disorder, a condition where she had a strong desire to remove a part of her body. I had been standing in front of the hospital room door for over an hour. Although I really wanted to go in, I didn't know how to face Agatha. Everything between us will probably end. Body integrity identity disorder is a rare psychological condition where the person affected feels that a part of their body does not belong to them and has an intense desire to remove it. In the United States,
This syndrome has attracted the attention of the medical community and society in recent years. To date, the exact cause of BIID has not been clearly identified. Some patients with this condition in the United States, Jewel Shuping, self-inflicted drainage fluid into her eyes. From a young age, Jewel had hated seeing everything and tried to imagine how happy she would be if she were blind. Chloe Jennings, white, lives in a wheelchair and uses a clamp on her leg, despite being perfectly healthy. This condition severely impacts the psychological and physical well-being of those affected, requiring further research to find an effective treatment method.
I'm Melvin, and I'm 17. I've lived with my grandparents and Aunt Sam since I was little, and I've never met my parents. I've always felt loved by my grandmother and Aunt Sam, but not by my grandfather. I feel like there's always been a gap between me and my grandfather that just can't be closed. He's never really shown me any words of care or loving gestures. When I was 10, I used to run home from the bus stop all excited. The sound of kids crying left me feeling really confused. When I walked into the living room, I saw my grandmother holding a baby wrapped in a blanket, and she was crying too. "Come here, Melvin. This is your little brother, Henry." I was really curious. As a 10-year-old, I had a lot of questions, like why I suddenly had a younger brother, and whether he was born by our mother, Carrie.
You're not allowed to ask questions that go against any instructions from adults.
My grandfather's voice sounded really annoyed when he heard my questions. Aunt Sam quickly pulled me over to see my brother, but I was in tears because I felt sorry for myself and didn't really feel anything for Henry. I stayed in the room that my grandmother said was my mom's room, and Henry stayed with my grandparents since he was too young. I asked my grandmother about my parents many times, but she just smiled with a red, tearful face. My grandmother always told me to keep the room just as it was, down to the smallest details. The picture showed a very young and beautiful woman, and my grandmother said that that was my mother, Carrie. I don't have any information about my father, and neither do my grandparents. I don't share many traits with my mother, but resemble my grandfather more, and I really don't like that. I've had insomnia since I was a kid, probably around 7 or 8 years old, because of all the different noises. Sometimes it was the laughter of kids, and other times it was the crying and scolding. I could never quite pinpoint where it was coming from. I told my grandmother everything because she always listened to me.
Stop making up stories and asking for things.
My grandfather's voice sounded annoyed when he overheard me telling my grandmother that the room needed better soundproofing. My grandmother didn't have much of a say in the house because she didn't work. The whole family relied on my grandfather's salary for all the expenses. I saw my grandfather get angry with her many times, even throwing away the dinner she had just made because she mentioned my mother. She wanted him to spend some money to hire a detective to find my mother, Carrie. My grandfather didn't seem to care about my mother, so I could kind of understand why he didn't show much love for my siblings and me. Because I was really afraid of my grandfather and didn't want to cause any trouble for my grandmother, I tried to put up with those noises for many years. Sometimes, hearing the laughter of the kids made me laugh too. I also have a younger brother, Henry, but we always had to follow my grandfather's strict rules, so we were all pretty closed off. As I grew up, I always planned to visit my mother and ask her why she didn't bring my brothers and me along, or why she never came to visit us. One day, the family dinner took a serious turn when my grandfather announced that he was at risk of losing his job. At night, I heard the two adults arguing about money and some illness, along with the sound of a child crying. I put a pillow over my ears, but I couldn't block out the annoying noise. It sounds like it's Grandpa. I sat up and walked around the room, trying to find a spot where I could hear the noise as clearly as possible. The woman's scream was really loud, and then the argument stopped. I had a lot of doubt about the man's voice. For almost a week now, the noise I've been hearing every night is a mix of a child crying and a woman's soothing voice. Of course I can't sleep. The child's crying might mean they're uncomfortable or sick. I know this from seeing my grandmother take care of Henry when he was little. She gently held Henry, comforted him, and sang him a lullaby with a worried and tired expression. A noise that sounded like a door opening came from right outside. I quietly went to open the door, and it was my grandfather. He must be thirsty. I figured that since there was a bathroom in my grandparents' bedroom, he wouldn't use the one in the living room. I followed him down to the living room, and instead of turning right to go to the kitchen, my grandfather turned left. I kept a safe distance so he wouldn't notice me and kept following him. My grandfather went into the basement. I waited until he was inside, then I hurriedly followed him. But by the time I got to the basement, my grandfather had disappeared. I walked around looking for him but couldn't find him, and I started wondering if I was dreaming. I decided to sit in a hidden corner and wait, and eventually I fell asleep. The sound like a lock made me jump awake. I was surprised when my grandfather appeared out of nowhere and left the basement. I didn't tell my grandmother, but decided to keep an eye on my grandfather for a few more days. For the next 3 days, my grandfather didn't do anything out of the ordinary and didn't go to the basement again. I was tormented by the sound of a little girl crying and the woman's constant cursing. In her scolding and cursing, she mentioned Mark, my grandfather. I grew more and more curious about my grandfather and was sure he was hiding some kind of secret. On the 4th night, I saw my grandpa pulling back a shelf in the basement, and it opened up to another basement behind it. While I was still in shock, my grandpa led a woman holding a little girl, and they both ran out of the basement in a hurry. The woman's face looked a lot like my mom's. I didn't really react, and I'm not sure what I was feeling at that moment. I just stayed in that corner of the basement until the next morning. The police, along with my grandparents, Aunt Sam, and the woman who looked like my mom, came back. With the police urging him on, my grandpa reopened the door to the other basement. 4 more people came out one by one, all calling the woman Mom and my grandpa Dad. My grandmother immediately collapsed and gasped. I ran over to hug her, and everyone was surprised. The strange woman looked at me, burst into tears, and called my name. The whole truth about my parents, the 2 people I had been longing to see for 17 years, was finally revealed. The noises I heard every night were from my mom and my siblings, who had been living in a dark, cramped basement. My mom had been imprisoned for 24 years by her own father, someone I didn't know whether to call Dad or Grandpa. I had 7 siblings in total. It should have been 8, but one of them died because my mom was abused while she was 7 months pregnant. My grandfather took Henry and me upstairs because the basement was too cramped and told us that my mom had abandoned us. I can't forgive the person who committed this terrible crime, but he did create my 7 siblings. Mother Carrie endured extreme physical and mental pain. Even though she hated the person who took away her future and happiness, she always said that she loved and protected all of us at all costs. I love my mom and my other siblings a lot, for I'm the lucky one. I've decided to move on and live a new, happy life with my grandmother, Mother Carrie, Aunt Sam, and my 6 siblings. But I never stopped wondering why my grandfather did such horrible things to his own daughter. The story is based on a real-life event about the tragic life of a girl named Elizabeth Fritzl. Her real dad is Joseph Fritzl, a messed up, creepy guy. He started abusing his daughter Elizabeth when she was just 11. When Elizabeth was growing up, she tried to run away from her monster of a dad a bunch of times, but it never worked. For 7 years, starting when Elizabeth was 11, Joseph started working on turning the basement into a prison. On August 28, 1984, when Elizabeth was only 18, he drugged her and locked her up in the dark basement. He raped her every day, and after 24 years, Elizabeth had 7 kids with him, going through unimaginable pain and humiliation. In April 2008, Joseph finally let his oldest daughter, Kristen, who was really sick, go to the hospital. From there, the truth came out, and the whole world saw the face of a monster. "Dennis, where are you?" I yelled, feeling so worried and helpless, looking for my 6-year-old. It was Sunday, so I took my kid to the playground because I promised him if he got good grades. Every time I went to the playground, park, or supermarket, I ended up playing hide and seek, all annoyed. When I run out of patience, I'll just call the radio station to find the lost kid. "Dennis, you want to make this your last trip to the amusement park?" I was so mad when I found him at the toy counter. "Mom, check it out, Giant Mickey," my son shouted. He was standing next to this man who looked like he was around 6 feet tall. The person had on a Mickey Mouse mask, but it looked all weird and messed up, just black and white. The black clothes and his tall frame made him look really giant. I figured he was a toy store employee. Out of nowhere, he hoisted my kid up on his neck and posed for a pic. The boy was giggling and threw his hand up like Mickey. I snapped a quick pic, helped my kid down, said thanks, and then we bounced. Lately, the local police are on the hunt for a murderer. Nobody knows what he really looks like. All we know is he usually shows up wearing a messed up Mickey mask in all black. I was totally speechless when I heard the news that night. I compared the footage from the CCTV the news showed with the pics I took of my kid that morning, and I just lost it and started crying. I checked my kid to make sure he was all right. Then I called the police to report what happened. My husband's away on a business trip, and it freaks me out to think my kid and I ran into that murderer. Please keep us safe. I begged the police for help. After the police left, I tried calling my husband, but the line was busy. I sent him a pic of my kid with Mickey and a message about what was going on, hoping he'd wrap up his work and get home soon. I locked the door real careful and checked it again. Then I hit up the store to order 3 more CCTVs and set up a time for them to come install them tomorrow. Out of nowhere, I felt like the house was way too big for just the 2 of us, and there were so many places to hide. I think I gotta call the whole construction crew to switch up the layout of the house. I went up to Dennis's room, and he wasn't asleep yet. I could hear him giggling as I got close to the door. "What are you doing, Dennis?"
"Mom, look."
I jumped and shouted loud. My kid was wearing a Mickey mask on his head and dancing around. I rushed over, yanked off the mask, and tossed it on the floor. Who let you play with these gross things? I shouted, my eyes wide and my finger pointing right at my kid's face. The boy looked scared and his eyes were starting to fill up with tears. Dennis ran to the bed and wrapped himself up in the blanket. I grabbed the mask and asked Dennis where it came from, like really urgently. But all I got back was my kid sobbing. I called the police back and handed them the mask. I couldn't calm down, and my body was shaking with every stutter. I asked the cops for a protective order, and they totally agreed right away. The whole week after that was just awful. My kid and I switched to online learning and working from home. Dennis wouldn't stop fussing and throwing tantrums because he felt cooped up, which was driving me as nuts as being strained by a 44-pound fishing line. My kid and I were getting more and more at odds and distant. He kept asking about the mask and wanted me to give it back. Stop yelling and acting out, Dennis. You still haven't told me where you got that mask. It's my secret, he yelled with all his stubbornness and bolted upstairs. I flopped down on the sofa, covering my face, feeling totally helpless. Dana, my husband called out. He got back from his 3-month business trip. I ran over and hugged him tight, then just started crying. After chatting for a bit, my husband said he wanted to head upstairs to see our kid. A few minutes later, I went to Dennis's room and Mickey, the killer, was right in front of me with my kid on his neck. Mom, Dennis waved, looking super happy. I'm back, the killer said, sounding just like my husband. I'm Dylan, 38 years old. I work as a financial analyst for a bank in San Jose. I don't have a girlfriend, nor do I have plans for married life. I'm quite introverted and a workaholic. Instead of finding myself a girlfriend and having sweet dates, I often work late at the company, sometimes even until night. One Wednesday evening, I remember leaving the office at 11 p.m. That day I didn't drive to work. I stood in front of the company to catch a taxi. It's strange because this area usually has many taxis, but today I've been waiting for 20 minutes and still haven't seen any passing by. After a stressful day at work, I'm tired and starting to lose patience. It's almost 11:30 p.m. and a taxi suddenly arrives. I can't wait any longer and jump onto the road to flag down the vehicle. The taxi driver looks at me with panic, probably because of my somewhat crazy actions. The driver looks at me and then looks over to the passenger seat, appearing very panicked and worried. I glance over to the passenger seat, and it turns out this taxi already has a passenger. It's a girl. She's leaning her head against the window, seeming either drunk or quite tired. The taxi driver lowers the window, wearing a black face mask. He looks at me with concern. "Sorry, sir, I already have a passenger," he says. I'm too tired to wait for another taxi. I suggest that the driver lets me ride along, and he can drop off the girl first to maintain the order of the taxi call. He looks worriedly at the girl for a long time before turning to me. When I offer to pay double the fare, he reluctantly agrees. Getting into the car, I smell a strong smell of alcohol, so the girl must be drunk. The driver asks for my home address. He says that my house is closer than the girl's, so he'll drop me off first. I thank him. Out of appreciation, I engage in conversation and ask for her name, but he doesn't answer. I assume he's tired, so I keep quiet. I'm a bit curious, so I observe the girl. She looks quite young, probably in her early 20s. Her skin is pale, and her long hair covers most of her face. Despite the hot weather, she's wearing a high-neck sweater. The car suddenly brakes hard, and everything lurches forward. The driver says there was a cat crossing the road. I hear the girl's head bump against the car quite hard, but she doesn't react, still deeply asleep. I want to help her sit up straight, but the driver immediately refuses. He uses one hand to awkwardly adjust her sitting position. After a while, I suddenly smell a strong odor. I'm not sure, the smell of alcohol is still very strong. I look out realizing we're almost home, so I proactively pay the taxi fare. When I say I want to pay through the ride-hailing app, the driver immediately refuses, saying I should pay in cash. I don't have enough cash, so I hope he'll pass by the nearest ATM. The driver suddenly shows annoyance, urging me to hurry up. I withdraw money as quickly as possible. When I return to the car, I accidentally catch a glimpse of the girl's pale face sitting in the passenger seat. I freeze for a few seconds, wanting to observe her more closely. Surprisingly, I catch the cold gaze of the driver. I quickly get into the car and pay the taxi fare. The amount I give him is quite large, and I request change, but he refuses, saying he doesn't have any cash here. The more the driver gives me a sense of unease. Finally, I arrive home. It's almost 1 a.m. As I get out of the car before I can close the door, the taxi speeds away. Entering the house, images of that girl and the driver keep appearing in my mind. After showering, I go upstairs and fall asleep immediately. The next day is a day off, and I wake up quite late. I watch the news on TV, and they report a carjacking incident involving a taxi company. The driver of that taxi was repeatedly beaten on the head and died early this morning at the hospital. Along with that serious carjacking is the disappearance of a young girl named Alida. Putting everything together, I suddenly remember the taxi driver and the girl from last night. I will call the police to report everything I witnessed, but my phone has disappeared. I sit for a moment, trying to remember where I left it. On the taxi, I probably dropped it when I got out of the car. I call the police on the landline, recounting everything I witnessed. Using the GPS on my phone, the police quickly locate the stolen taxi. It's on an empty lot 40 kilometers away from the city. The car is running out of gas and both doors are wide open. Inside the car, on the passenger seat, the police discover blood soaked into the seat cushion and dried. About a week later, the police find the body of the missing girl under a tree, 10 kilometers from the location of the taxi. The girl's body has a long slash across her neck, which is the direct cause of her death. Through investigation, the police conclude that the girl found under the tree is the same girl in the taxi that I met that night. The driver's name was actually her terrible boyfriend impersonating. His name is Gary. After getting drunk, Gary brutally murdered his own girlfriend and tried to destroy the body. All evidence pointed to Gary being guilty, but the next challenge for the police was to find him. There were no clues left behind, and that murderer seemed to have vanished from this world. I am still shivered thinking about that night. I sat with the body of a girl with a brutal murderer for 30 minutes in the car.
I still clearly remember that day, a fall afternoon in the suburbs of Minnesota. The dry leaves scattered across the path leading to Mark's house, each step seeming to disturb the stillness of the air. The chill in the air carried the smell of earth and rotting wood, drifting on the wind. I pulled my coat tighter around me, feeling the wind slip through the collar, bringing a vague but uncomfortable sensation. Mark's house appeared before me, an old 2-story wooden house, deeply reminiscent of 1970s America. The swing on the porch creaked in the wind, the peeling paint revealing the dark wood underneath. Every detail evoked a nostalgic yet slightly eerie feeling. Mark and I had many memories tied to this house. When we were kids, we would play in the garden or in the basement. I want you to help clean the basement. I think we might find some interesting stuff from when we were kids, Mark said. Those words sparked my curiosity because the basement had been the place we used to hide for hours, telling ghost stories and daring each other to walk through the darkness. But it had been a long time since any of us dared to mention it. We stood before the door leading to the basement. Mark's hand gripped the flashlight tightly, his eyes constantly scanning, as if he feared someone was watching. "That's the devil's domain," Mark said with a light laugh. But seeing the worried look on Mark's face, I knew the basement wasn't just a messy place. The wooden stairs creaked with every step. The flashlight's beams swept across the walls covered in cobwebs, revealing stains and patches of mildew. A musty smell filled the air, mixed with a foul stench, as if something was decaying. I held tightly to the railing, trying not to look down. The weak light from Mark's flashlight swept across a corner of the room, where a large wooden box was hidden in the shadows. The old box, its paint chipped away, looked as if it had been there for decades. Mark bent down, his hands trembling as he opened the box. A putrid, rotting smell wafted up, causing me to step back, my hand covering my mouth. In the dim light, I saw what was inside: animal carcasses, cats, mice, birds, stuffed into the box. Some were intact, but most had decayed, their fur matted together, and a dark brown, slimy liquid spilling from the sides of the box. My heart pounded, and a wave of nausea rose within me. Mark stood frozen, the flashlight in his hand flickering as if he too couldn't control it. "Isaiah," he whispered hoarsely, almost as if in disbelief. Isaiah, the 17-year-old boy with a cold face and empty eyes. He always kept his distance from everyone, lost in his own world. Mark told me that Isaiah liked to collect things that others threw away: old toys, bottle caps, and sometimes even stranger things. But this wasn't a hobby. This was something else. Mark confessed to me that he had once seen Isaiah kill a bird in his yard a few months ago. "I thought it was just a stupid prank," Mark said, his voice breaking. "But now, I'm not so sure." Mark's parents decided to send Isaiah for psychological treatment after finding strange drawings in his room, images of torn-up animals, twisted faces full of rage. I remember Isaiah's cold, challenging stare when he was taken away, as though he could see right through us. A month later, Mark called me. Isaiah had escaped from the treatment center. The police were notified, but every search attempt had been in vain. Soon after, strange things began happening in the area. Animals went missing, and their bodies were found in a state of brutal torture. The news spread throughout the town, but no one dared to speak Isaiah's name. One late evening, while driving past Mark's house, I saw a figure standing by the second-floor window. My heart stopped. It couldn't be Mark, and clearly, it was no one else but Isaiah. That night, I dreamed of Isaiah. He was standing at the foot of my bed, his deep eyes and cold smile on his lips. "Are you scared?" His voice echoed in my head. I shot up, my back drenched in sweat. Since then, I've never stopped feeling like I'm being watched. One evening, as I was heading home, I saw muddy footprints right in front of my living room window. I didn't dare to investigate further. Isaiah was still missing, and no one knew where he was. But I knew one day I'd see his name on the news, tied to a horrific crime. I am Claire Williams, 31 years old, the head chef at the Crimson, one of New York's most prestigious restaurants. I'm not arrogant, but I know I'm good. However, with my boss Maxwell Reynolds, it seems like it's never enough. "It's too bland," he complained after tasting the foie gras pâté I had just made. "It needs something more unique." I nodded, suppressing my anger. This wasn't the first time I had endured Reynolds' criticisms, but this time it was different. In 2 weeks, the Crimson would host some of the most distinguished guests, executives, politicians, and a few Hollywood stars. This was my chance to prove my worth. "I'll create a special menu," I promised. "Dishes like never before." Reynolds looked at me with skepticism. "Convince me. If your menu succeeds, you'll get $50,000. If it fails..." He shrugged. "I'm sure you don't want to know the consequences." My throat went dry. $50,000. I locked the door to my apartment and placed the ingredient bag down. Inside were the freshest items from the market, black truffles, foie gras, and rare herbs. But it wasn't enough. I needed something more special. I opened the old notebook, flipping through the yellowed pages. It was my grandmother's cookbook, a Romanian woman with ancient recipes. She had told me about the special dishes her ancestors used to prepare for sacrificial ceremonies. The secret to flavor lies in sacrifice, she once told me. At the time, I didn't understand what she meant. I only knew that the meal that night was so delicious, I could never forget it. But as I grew older, as I began to truly touch the art of cooking, I gradually understood. To reach absolute perfection, sometimes a chef must sacrifice a part of themselves. The secret to flavor lies in sacrifice, she would whisper. I never fully understood the meaning of those words until now. With trembling fingers, I skimmed the pages until I found the recipe I needed. The Last Supper. The next 2 weeks, I locked myself in my apartment, only going out when I needed more ingredients. I experimented tirelessly. Each attempt brought me closer to perfection, but Reynolds was still not satisfied. Good, he admitted after tasting the 5th dish I presented, but still missing something. What is it? I nearly shouted. I've used the best ingredients, the most refined techniques. Reynolds smiled coldly. It's missing passion, Claire. You need to put your heart and soul into the dish. Heart and soul. I returned to my apartment, muttering those 2 words over and over. Perhaps that was what I needed. The day of the important dinner arrived. I arrived early at the Crimson, bringing a suitcase filled with my special ingredients. The kitchen was crowded with chefs and sous chefs, all busy preparing. Everyone out. I need space, and I'll do everything myself, I insisted. But Claire, we have so much to do, the sous chef protested. This is my menu. I'll do it my way. They looked at me in surprise, but no one dared to argue. Soon I was alone in the vast kitchen. I locked the door, opened my suitcase, and began to prepare. Today was special. Today I would create my masterpiece. The secret to flavor lies in sacrifice. A shiver ran through me as I felt the cold blade. I took a deep breath, trying to slow my racing heart. A clean, precise cut, delicate like the blade of a master craftsman. I clenched my teeth, feeling the muscle fibers separating, each small blood vessel leaking out hot, dark red liquid. The sensation was nothing like I had imagined. It was strangely satisfying. I looked down at the piece of meat I had just cut. It was perfect, tender, bright red, with perfectly interlaced fat lines. I couldn't stop. With the care of a master chef, I placed it on the cutting board, sprinkled a little sea salt and rosemary. The dizziness hit me, but I didn't care. This was the sacrifice I had to make. This was the essence of the art. I seasoned each piece with herbs from my grandmother's book, whispering ancient prayers. Blood dripped onto the floor, bringing me a thrill greater than ever. I was creating art with my own body. My heart and soul were blending into the dish. A knock on the door interrupted me as I was finishing the dessert. Claire, the guests have arrived. Reynolds' voice echoed through the door. They're ready to taste your menu. 5 more minutes, I replied weakly. I looked down at the completed plate of food. The starter was foie gras pâté with toasted bread. The main course was steak with a rich red sauce. And the dessert was pudding with a secret ingredient. I put on my crisp white chef's jacket and placed the dishes on the cart. A dizzying sensation hit me, but I pushed it aside. Nothing would stop me from completing my masterpiece. The banquet hall was filled with laughter and soft music as I pushed the cart out. Reynolds was chatting with a group of guests, a smug smile on his face. Ah, here it is, he exclaimed when he saw me. The special menu I promised. The servers took the dishes from the cart and served them to each guest. I stood silently in the dark corner, watching them taste the food. The first reaction was surprise. A woman in a red dress closed her eyes, savoring each flavor. An older man nodded in approval. One by one, they were all mesmerized by my dish. "Fantastic," Reynolds said loudly, raising his glass. "I've never tasted anything like this. The flavor, it's hard to describe." I smiled weakly. Blood was soaking through the bandages, but I didn't care. Only one thing mattered. I had succeeded. "We want to meet the chef," one guest exclaimed, and others joined in. "Chef! Chef!" Reynolds gestured for me to step into the spotlight. I stumbled forward, feeling my legs as heavy as lead. All eyes were on me. "This is Claire Williams," Reynolds introduced, patting my back, "the genius behind tonight's feast." The applause erupted. I bowed my head in thanks, struggling to keep my balance. "What ingredients did you use?" a woman asked. "I've never tasted anything like this." "It's a secret," I whispered, feeling the blood run down my legs. "A family recipe." Reynolds laughed. "Claire put her heart and soul into this dish," he joked, unaware of how right he was. I stumbled, almost falling. A server rushed to catch me. "Are you okay?" he asked, worried. "I'm fine," I said, but blood was starting to seep through my white chef's jacket. "Oh my God, you're hurt!" the woman in the red dress cried out, pointing at the spreading blood. The room fell silent. I felt my vision blur, but I still tried to smile. "This is my art," I whispered, barely audible. "I've sacrificed everything for the perfect dish." I slowly removed my chef's jacket, revealing my body covered in deep cuts, some still bleeding. Gasps filled the room. "Claire." Reynolds stepped back, his face pale. "What have you done?" "The secret to flavor," I whispered, "lies in sacrifice." Realizing the truth, one guest started to vomit. Others screamed. Panic spread as they realized what they had just eaten. But I just smiled. I had succeeded. I had created a dish they would never forget. A dish they would remember forever, even if they tried to forget it. "My $50,000, Reynolds?" I asked calmly amidst the chaos. "I've done what you asked." Reynolds looked at me horrified and disgusted. "A masterpiece," I whispered as I fell to the floor, blood pooling around me. "The perfect dish." As my consciousness faded, I heard the distant sound of ambulance sirens, but I knew they were too late. I had given too much of myself, and as darkness enveloped me, I smiled, because I knew I had created a dish that no one would ever forget, and a masterpiece that no one could surpass. Sometimes, to create greatness, one must be willing to give up everything, even themselves. I'm Logan, 37 years old. I'm driving to visit my daughter for our regularly scheduled visit once a month. She lives with her mother. My ex-wife and I have been divorced for 2 years. The highway, Interstate 95, heading north through New Hampshire, is deserted at night. I check my watch, 11:42 p.m. I expect to arrive around 6 a.m. Ahead of my car is a black sedan. As I get closer, my headlights illuminate the rear of the black sedan, and I notice one of the taillights is missing. A dangling white strip visible. Looks like paint. Maybe the driver doesn't know their car has a problem. I accelerate, pulling up alongside the sedan. I lower my window, waving to get the driver's attention. It's a middle-aged man with a gaunt face. He turns to look at me with cold eyes. "Your taillight's out," I yell, hoping he can hear me over the wind and engine noise. Instead of a nod of thanks, he stares at me with a panicked expression, then abruptly swerves, cutting right in front of my car. I slam on the brakes, my heart pounding in my chest. The sedan speeds off, quickly disappearing around a bend. That wasn't a normal reaction. Something was wrong. For a moment, I recall the look in that man's eyes, fear mixed with a brutal, crazed edge, the missing taillight, the streak of paint oozing from inside. I decide to follow the sedan, maintaining a safe distance so as not to be detected. My mind races through dozens of different scenarios. Maybe he's just some petty thief transporting illegal goods, or worse, drugs or weapons, or is someone locked in the trunk? Suddenly, as the sedan goes around a curve in my headlights, I see something protruding from the hole where the light should be. A human hand waving, as if signaling for help. I accelerate, trying to get closer. Yes, it's a hand. Probably a woman's or a child's. Without hesitating for another second, I grab my cell phone and call the police, my eyes still fixed on the sedan ahead. I think I just witnessed a kidnapping. I'm driving on Interstate 95, northbound, near the New Hampshire border. There's a black sedan, and from the taillight area, I saw a hand waving from inside.
Can you read the license plate number?
I try to get closer, but the driver of the sedan has noticed my presence. He suddenly turns onto a small road on the right, with no streetlights. I can't read the plate. It's too dark. But he just turned onto a dirt road. I'm going to follow.
Sir, you shouldn't do that. It could be a dangerous situation. Please wait for the police.
But I can't wait. Someone is in danger. Every passing moment could be life or death for them. I turn onto the dirt road leading deep into the woods, dark and desolate. After about 5 minutes of driving on the dirt road, the sedan stops in a clearing surrounded by tall pine trees. I also stop my car about 100 yards back, turning off my headlights and engine. Through the dim moonlight, I can see the man get out of the car, look around cautiously, and then disappear into the trees. This is my chance. I open my car door, step out, and cautiously approach the sedan, carrying a small flashlight I always keep in my car. As I get closer, I can see the trunk and taillight area more clearly. I shine my flashlight into the hole and whisper, "Is anyone in there?" A moment of silence, then I hear a faint whisper, "Help me, please." It's a woman. "I'm going to get you out of there." "Are you hurt?" "No, but he'll be back soon. Please, hurry." I look around the car, searching for a way to open the trunk. I try the car doors, but as expected, they're locked. I consider smashing a window, but that would make too much noise. I go back to my car, open the trunk, and take out a lug wrench from my repair kit. Returning to the sedan, I carefully wrap the wrench in my jacket to muffle the sound, then smash the driver's side window. The sound of breaking glass startles me, even muffled by the jacket. I quickly open the car door, searching for the trunk release button, but just as the trunk pops open, I hear a noise behind me. I turn around and see the kidnapper standing there, just a few feet away. In his hand is a large hunting knife. "Who the hell are you? What are you doing with my car?" I grip the lug wrench tightly in my hand, knowing I have no other choice. "I know what you've done. The police are on their way. You should just surrender." He laughs, a cold, deranged sound. "You think you're a hero? What do you know about me? About what I've been through? She's my wife. She betrayed me. She deserves this." And then, like a predator, he lunges at me, the knife raised high. I sidestep, swinging the lug wrench up in defense, only the sound of his ragged breathing and the clanging of metal against metal filling the air. I need to end this quickly. As he comes at me again, I swing the wrench at his knife-wielding arm. I hear a sickening crack, and the knife falls to the ground, but he doesn't stop. Fueled by pain and rage, he tackles me, knocking me to the ground. We struggle, him trying to reach the fallen knife, me trying to push him off. During the struggle, I feel a sharp pain in my side. He stabbed me. With all my remaining strength, I shove him off and swing the lug wrench again, this time aiming for his head. A sickening thud echoes, and he collapses, unconscious. I stagger to my feet, move towards the open trunk, and see a woman huddled inside, her hands and feet bound. "Are you okay?" I ask, my voice weakening from blood loss. "I'm okay. Thank you. Thank you so much." Just then, the flashing lights and wailing sirens of police cars appear down the dirt road. I sigh in relief, knowing it's over. As the police officers approach, I collapse, exhausted from blood loss. But I remain conscious enough to see them handcuff the kidnapper and help the woman into an ambulance. When I wake up, I'm in a hospital bed. Morning sunlight streams through the window, and beside me is Miranda, my daughter, holding my hand tightly. Miranda hugs me gently, careful not to touch my wound. "Dad, you're my hero." I smile, a wave of happiness washing over me, despite the throbbing pain from my injury. you.